Half hour. Hello and welcome to Half Hour, an entertainment podcast through Two Worlds Entertainment. I'm Richie Grasso, Artistic Director.
And I'm Jeff Malone, Executive Director.
Welcome to our podcast. We have a very special spotlight episode today where we're taking a little bit of a break from our weekly recap scoop, and we're giving a very special spotlight episode. And we're calling this new mini-series throughout our podcast, The Battle of the Divas, because a lot of you have been hearing and watching and listening and realizing that sometimes we mention names of artists and people who we both like, and we always say, we should do a podcast episode on them. We should do a podcast. So today, we are doing something a little special where I'm going to take a famous diva of the theater world, and Jeff is taking a famous diva of the pop music world, and we're going to talk about them. We're going to give you guys some information on them, their history, their background. We're going to talk about what they're currently doing, if they're still living. We're going to talk about some of the things that we've enjoyed them doing in their career, some of the things we wish they didn't do, or maybe they changed, or, and maybe we'll wrap up with what we hoped they do in the future and what we wish to see out of them, because the two people we're going to talk about are people we both really feel passionate about in their music and them as a person and as an artist. Mm-hmm. So we're here, Battle of the Divas. Dun, dun,
and
dun.
Who is your diva?
I have many. There's many in my industry,
episode,
in the theater industry.
Who is your
For this episode, today I'm talking about Miss Barbra Streisand, my fave, one of my faves, who I was very fortunate enough to see live in person a few years ago in Brooklyn, which was really, really special. So I'm really looking forward to talking about her. Who is your diva that we will be talking about today, Mr. Jeff?
My little pop diva is Miss Kelly Clarkson, who I was also fortunate enough to see.
How many times?
I think 7.
Wow, 7. I can't. Well, that's a lot. That means you really like her.
Yes, and the last time I saw her was with you, actually.
Yes.
Out in Long Island. So
we're gonna give you, we're gonna kind of let you all listen in, learn some things about these two people, hear us banter a little, because we do have some healthy debates here about what we like and don't like about each of them and what they each bring to the table and things like that. So We'll save our commentary for later.
For after statements.
So today is, like I said, our very special Battle of the Divas. We're not talking about our shows and stuff. That'll come back. We're taking a little bit of a break from that and kind of throwing it up a little bit and changing it up a little bit. Yeah. So without further ado, we're going to Miss Barbra Streisand land first, everyone. So hopefully you learned some new things about her. Here we go. Miss Barbra Streisand.
Give us the history.
Sure. She was born April 24th, 1942, which means she will be 80 years old this April. She is currently 79. So, wow. Let's start there. 80, still working. She just released her latest album last Friday called Release Me Too, where she reflects back on some of the poignant songs of her career and releases them. Some of them are duets, some of them are solos. So at almost 80 years old, this woman is still working all the way through pandemics. She's released a few albums now in this pandemic, or a couple in the last few years. She's 79 years old. She's an EGOT winner, which means she has won an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony. There are only a handful of people in the history of the world that have ever won all 4 of those. Bravo to her. Yes, quite an accomplishment. She began working on Broadway in the early 60s. She came from a poor family. She started out in musical theater in interesting ways. I'm going to get to that in a little bit, but she did start with Broadway in the early 60s. And she was signed to Columbia Records right away, and Columbia Records worked with her on that. The Barbra Streisand album came out in 1963, which I actually have here. I'm going to show.
Oh, props.
If you're not on the podcast, you can't see, but if you're watching our video, you can see. And if you see really close, I have a price tag where I got it at a tag sale for 99 cents. It's worth so much more than that, but I got it for 99 cents. The Barbra Streisand album won the Grammy Award in 1963 for Album of the Year.
Wow. So
1963, here she is. She just signs to Columbia Records, releases the Barbra Streisand album, wins a Grammy Award for it. So huge accomplishments at such a young age right off the bat. Literally 21, I think, 1942 she's born, 1963. So very young to be winning the Album of the Year Grammy Award. She has topped the U.S. Billboard's Top 200 charts with 11 albums, which is a record for a woman, female artist. She's had 5 number 1 singles. And by the end of the 1960s, she went into film. In 1968, she did the film Funny Girl. She had starred in Funny Girl earlier in the 60s on Broadway. And then she went to do the film a few years later, starred in that, and actually wins an Academy Award for Best Actress in that. So Grammys and Academy Awards before she's even 30 years old. I mean, absolutely remarkable stuff. And then a year later, 1969, she goes and stars in Hello, Dolly. I think what's interesting about Hello, Dolly is usually the track is played by an older person like Carol Channing in Broadway. She was so young playing Dolly Levi in the film, which was controversial for the time. But she was a star of the time, a breakout star. And so she goes in 1969 to do Hello, Dolly. She also she wins her second Academy Award writing the love theme to the Stars Born film. We actually have a podcast about the Stars Born films, and you can go back and listen to that. We talk about her film of that in the 70s. She's the first woman composer to win an Academy Award. The first female composer to win an Academy Award for composing a song. Then she does the famous movie Yentl in 1983, which she's the first woman to write, produce, direct, and star. She did all of that for that film. Really impressive stuff. Yeah. She sold over 150 million records worldwide. She's one of the best-selling recording artists of all time. Another interesting fact about her, she is the highest certified female artist in the United States with 68.5 million album units, and that's tied with Mariah Carey. So they're both still putting music out. So it's not like, Mariah is a lot younger than her. At one point she could surpass her maybe, but to be tied with Mariah Carey, actually quite an accomplishment for Mariah Carey to be, not as old as Barbra and to already have hit the record sales that, have Barbra already has.
That Christmas album really does it for her.
Yeah, right. That all I want for Christmas. Yeah. What's interesting fun fact, Barbra Streisand in 1960 starts out in the industry as an usher at the Lunfontaine Theater in the original Broadway production of The Sound of Music.
Wow.
So she's starting think about the 1960s for this woman. She starts as an usher in the original Broadway cast of Sound of Music. By the end of the 60s is Academy Award winner, Grammy Award winner, star of films, releasing albums, signed to Columbia Records. That's only 9 years from 1960 to 1969. So we learned this a lot about how things move really fast for people sometimes. And I think for her, so much of her success came a long time ago, right at the beginning of her career when she was in her 20s. Mm-hmm. So much of her success is in her 20s. We talk about that a lot when we talked about Billie Eilish last week. Some of these young people find that success really quick. And some people end it really quick.
Yeah, because you have to know how to handle it.
Right. And so for this woman to be turning 80 years old next year, it's pretty astonishing. Mm-hmm. A couple more fun facts about her before I talk about my opinions. Her original Broadway debut was in a musical called I Can Get It For You Wholesale. And then that was in the early 60s. In 1964, she does Broadway's Funny Girl. And interestingly enough, fun fact, she's Tony nominated for the 1964 Broadway Funny Girl. She loses the Tony Award to Carol Channing in Hello, Dolly that year. So Carol Channing wins the Tony Award. Then years later, Barbara's like, peace, I'm going to go play that role in the film. It's kind of astonishing.
Diva moment.
Carol Channing doesn't do the film. I think that's astonishing when so many people originate shows and roles on the stage and then don't go do the film. Especially when Carol Channing was
but she owned that role on the stage, so maybe it was
on the
time
stage. It was a
for
different
someone
take
else
on
to do it.
Right. But it's interesting. And also another fun fact, Barbra Streisand, ever since Funny Girl in 1964, has never returned to Broadway. She finds her start in I Can Get It For You Wholesale and Funny Girl, and then does not go back to Broadway. And finds all this success in film and directing and producing and starring and records and records and records and records. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit when I get into my opinion.
Those are what I like to call diva moments.
Diva moments. She wins a Tony Award, though, in 1970. She's the Star of the Decade Tony Award. So, by the 1970 comes, they're like, oh, she didn't win for the things, and so let's give her a Tony Award. And she's still not even 30 years old yet, and she's winning the Star of the Decade Tony Award. She has recorded 50 studio albums. I don't know many people, I can honestly say, that have recorded 50 studio albums. Pretty impressive. She has 43 Grammy nominations. She has won 8 Grammy Awards. And this is the big fun fact about it, not just a fun fact, an astonishing fact. She is the only performer, the only act, whatever you want to call it, band, soloist, female. She's the only performer to have a number 1 album in each of the last 6 decades. Every single decade of the last 6 decades, she has had a number 1 album in. something that comes close in some of my research is Bob Dylan is the first to have a top 40 album in every decade, from the 60s to now, the 2020s, which is also an amazing accomplishment for Bob Dylan. But that's the top 40 album. I'm talking about Barbra having a number one album.
Yeah.
In every decade of the last 6 decades.
Yeah.
Once again, something I don't know anybody else comes close. Some people come close to that, but nothing like being able to confidently say that, as a soloist especially, and as a female. A really, really amazing accomplishment.
There's not many artists from her first decade that she put something out that's still making music.
Right.
You
You
know?
think of the Beatles and all their success, but they haven't been around as long as
Right.
Barbra has. And that's why I mentioned this Bob Dylan fact too, because I think it's important to know he's still wildly successful in his career for many, many years. But that's just to put in comparison. She's, like I said, 16.5 million units of records sold. Very, very, very astonishing. So let me just give you a little bit of my opinion on this person, because I clearly am passionate about talking about her. Wildly successful. Let me talk about what I admire about her. I admire the bravery. I admire her being a female, directing, producing, starring, pumping out music, being there in the 60s, in the 70s. She has fans that are as old as her and have stood by her side. There's a reason why we go see her in a sold-out concert, 2 nights only, in Barclays in Brooklyn, and spend a lot of money to sit way upstairs, because this woman has a following, and she can keep doing this. I'm always impressed when a new album comes out. Sometimes this latest album, like, okay, it's a lot of the old music, but she didn't need to, we talk about this a lot in this podcast, reinvent. How do they reinvent? She does not reinvent herself, and she's one of the few people that I can sit here and say, I don't think she needs to. I think it works even when this latest album comes out, and it just, clearly it works because it makes the sales, it sells, and it's popular. So this woman could sit there on a microphone and sing the phone book, and she'll still make the sales. And my question for you is, why do so many younger people feel like they need to reinvent the wheel, but someone like her just doesn't have to? She could, but she doesn't have to. And why? What's your opinion on that?
My opinion is that she, from an artistry level, I don't find her to be that groundbreaking. So when you see certain artists out there that are reinventing themselves, it's because they want to be remembered for their artistry. If you're just going to be a artist that takes cover or that creates covers of songs that are popular and your sound is pretty much the same. I mean, this new album I was listening to, you were playing it in the background, and I was like, this sounds like she put it out 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's the difference, you know? But also, I think there's a big thing in America that people don't really talk about a lot, is Americans don't like change. So when you have an artist that you like and you follow them, you want them to sound exactly the same over and over and over again. And other artists that try to change their sound, they're not as successful in America. You have to look at some people, depending on the artist, because they'll either get backlash from their fans that love their sound. When you have someone like Pink, who went from one sound of like R&B to hip-hop to pop to rock to this, it makes an American think like, oh, they don't know what they want to be. So they kind of discard them a little bit. But the artistry of someone like Pink goes on. And someone like Taylor Swift, who went from like country all the way to pop to now alternative, she creates a fan base in a certain genre, and then she kind of squashes that genre because the fan is now like, well, I don't like pop music, I only like alternative music, or I don't like alternative, I only like country. So you see where someone like Barbra has stayed with the same sound, except for that one disco album.
Sure.
But she has stayed with that same sound over and over and over again, and her fan knows what they're going to get. Her fan's going to listen to the album, and they're going to say, oh, great, it's the Barbra that I love.
And I think that's charming in a way for someone who's been around so long. This woman doesn't seem like she's planning on stopping anytime soon. She's about to turn 80 years old, and she doesn't have to.
She could have recorded millions of songs, and we'll never know. But guess what? She can just put them on an album. She could drop 12 tracks on it.
Right.
It can cost her literally nothing. Master the album and put it out. And guess what? You got another hit.
I think that here's my opinion of what I would love to see in the next few years. If she's going to keep working and staying healthy and keep doing this, I would love to see a little bit more face to the world.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like, we don't know where she is. She hasn't done a film in how long? Is it like, ages. And it's like, there was rumors she was going to be doing the Gypsy movie and she was going to like direct it and maybe star in it. Like there was, and it's like, you used to do this. You can get back on the film and do it. What's your swan song?
Well,
what's going to be your end all film, or what's your big ending album or your big ending film role? Because another thing I will say is, wouldn't it be a beautiful, beautiful bow tied onto a beautiful box of presents of life if she came and did one more Broadway show? And the best, and hear me out, because the best part of that is you could do it. You could tell a producer, I'm going to do a one-woman show. I'm going to sit on a stool and I'm going to sing and I'm going to tell a life story. Or you could do a scripted one-woman show, or you could do a full musical and star in it. You could do it for a week, you could do it for a month, you could do it for a year. She has complete control to do whatever she wants. But to land on a Broadway stage, not in a concert arena, a Broadway stage where you started, and maybe that's in the works, who knows, we may never know.
It might be,
but wouldn't it be cool to kind of take it all these years later, 60 years later, and go right back to where you started and kind of wrap that present up with a bow. Like, look where I started and look where I'm kind of wrapping up. I think that would be so beautiful and charming. And I know she's probably LA based now, and New York is just a place she bops in for a concert and bops. It was cool to see her concert in Brooklyn, where she's from. That was cool and kind of cool. She talked about that in her concert a little bit, she's going back to her roots.
I guess the question is, like, do you think she can handle doing a Broadway show?
She handles an international tour still. She goes around and tours the country and the world. I think
sometimes we forget, like, a Broadway show is, 7 nights a week.
But she could even, but this is what I'm saying. She could say, you know what? I'm going to do 4 shows a week. And they're going to be, and no matinees. And I'm going to do it for the month of December only. I mean, she can make all these decisions, and a producer would be like, okay, like, because it's going to sell no matter what. So,
well, I mean, it was, but doing like 1 or 2 nights here and there is fine. You let your voice rest. I mean, after seeing that show, she probably needed some rest.
And watching her live, yeah, she used to hold these notes forever and ever. And listen, she's almost 80 years old.
I get it.
I think, anyway, listen, I think she's astonishing. I think her career, if we look at her, you can't look at those facts that I just read and say, you have to look at them and say, oh my God.
I don't say,
I know.
I guess the diva moment of her, though, is like taking all this stuff from the past and just releasing like it's new.
You know what?
I mean, that's pretty diva.
If you got it, as they say in the producers.
I'm keeping my name out there and I'm just going to release, there were 8 tracks over here. Here you go.
If, as they say in the producers, if you got it, flaunt it. She's got it. Just do it.
Yes.
There's nothing this woman can't do at this point. She's sitting on top of gold, Hollywood gold, and Broadway gold, and music history gold. So, hey, you could do whatever. You could stop. We could never hear from this woman again. We could hear from her every day. I think she could do whatever she wants. Yeah. With those stats, I'm astonished. So, and if you were to see, I'm going to just wrap up by saying I'm going to show in my video all my Barbra albums. Woo, Barbra! And my Funny Girl album.
Don't let them fool you. A lot of those are mine.
Okay,
I got them.
I love my Babs.
I have them on the list.
And by the way, last fun fact about her, Judy Garland, who she sang with. Judy Garland, there was a little bit of overlap there when Barbra was very young and Judy was on the last few years of her life. Judy Garland has said that Barbra Streisand is one of the last greatest belters of our time. So for Judy Garland to say that about...
Of Judy's time, because let's not say that she's the last greatest belter of our time.
Because we have some amazing belters. No,
after Judy is R.I.P., but let's just say, of Judy's time, she's one of the last greatest belters.
Judy felt at the time that she was one of the last great belters to come up through the ranks. And obviously now we have so many belters. Yeah. But for Judy Garland to say that...
We have a belter coming up on this podcast.
For Judy Garland, of all people, to say that about you, and for that black and white video to still be circulating Happy Days Are Here Again...
That's a great performance.
That's I imagine you're 80 years old and you're thinking back to when you were in your 20s singing with Judy Garland.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
And there we go. That's all I got on her, but I'm fascinated. So now we're going over to a different diva. Popland. Tell us all about this.
I love having these conversations with Richie because I go into Popland and I say my divas and he's like, what? Because he's so used to his traditional diva.
I am, but don't get me wrong. You love Barbra and I love Kelly. That's the point of this. Is not to say we hate them. We love them, but we just learn from each other about them. So you just learned a little bit about Barbra. I'd love to learn a little about Kelly.
For sure. So also, I wrote this down, but I don't know if you did. But do you know what Barbra's vocal range was?
It was quite it's quite astonishing. I don't know the specific range, but I know it was quite astonishing.
Just figured I'd ask. But, all right, so Kelly. Kelly, also born in April. I think she's actually April 28th. So very close to Miss Barbra. Two divas close in that age. She was born in Fort Worth, Texas. And after graduation, she's done musical theater in her life. She's, done everything like the pop stars do. But after she graduated, she said she was not going to go to college. And she had scholarships to go to college, but she opted just to move to Los Angeles. She wanted to pursue a music career as a backup singer for artists out there. So she went, she was doing all these lovely things. She was working as cocktail waitresses in comedy clubs.
She did, before you keep going into later in life, she did musical theater in high school.
Yes.
And that's kind of cool that she did that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, before you get moving through, I remember her talking about that a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
They have a, she also created demos. She was going on auditioning. She was doing all those great things. And about a year and a half in her LA trip, her apartment burned down. And she decided, I'm going to go home. And that's right around the time that American Idol was buzzing and people were like, Kelly, you need to audition. You need to get out there. She went and did it. And she became one of 10,000 contestants on American Idol that went over there. So we all know the American Idol story. She went through all of these rounds. She made it to the final with Justin Guarini, and she won. And what was her big deal? She won $1 million contract with RCA Records, and that's aligned with Clive Davis. And I guess what's interesting and like the highlight of this is no one really knew what the success of an American Idol winner was going to be. So Kelly being the first one, and the show having its first season, she releases the single A Moment Like This, and it skyrocketed to number 1. And she released her first album, Thankful, which also went to number 1. And I guess the follow-up to that was Miss Independent, the single, and that also went to number 1. So people were finally like, okay, this show is going to work. Kelly is going to work. And then they had many seasons after that. But this time also had a low moment for Kelly because she was part of a movie called From Justin to Kelly.
Oof,
Did you see that movie? And that was definitely a low moment for her there. But what's interesting about Kelly's career is, like, I remember her winning, and we were like, is she going to do anything after? She had a great moment in her A Moment Like This and Miss Independent and Low, all of those tracks from that album. And then all of the sudden, it's like around 2005, and she releases Breakaway. And this album, I kind of call it like the pop phenomenon album. It was so successful. It had so many weeks on the chart. It smashed so many singles out. You had Since You've Been Gone, which I think is one of the greatest written songs of all time, like pop songs of all time. Behind These Hazel Eyes, Walk Away, and I was like, wow, I'm a Kelly Clarkson fan. And from only seeing Britney Spears for once in my life, and then Kelly Clarkson being my next concert in my life, I was blown away because she could sing. I was in an amazing moment of general admission. I was jumping around, and I was like, wow, this is going to be my pop star. Kelly then went on to release 8 studio albums after, all of them called Thankful, Breakaway, My December, All I Ever Wanted, Stronger, the Wrapped in Red Christmas album, Piece by Piece, and this last one, Meaning of Life. This is the last tour I got to go on. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see. That Richie brought me to. And I thought that this was a great album because this was, I kind of feel like, Kelly's diva moment in that time. She was with RCA for a long time, and she finally wanted to break that tie with her contract, and she went on to release this album, Meaning of Life, in 2017, and that had Love So Soft, which was nominated for a Grammy, and Kelly has won Grammys, by the way. I think she has 2. And, yeah. So I think there's many things that Kelly is doing right, and I think she has many diva moments. She's an amazing coach on The Voice right now, kind of spreading that knowledge of the pop industry. She has the Kelly Clarkson show, which is taking Ellen's spot. She's super successful there, and she writes children's books. So some little fun facts about Kelly there, but what do you think about this diva's
I think Kelly
career?
Clarkson is very talented. I think that she's released a lot of music, and in her prime, she was going there. I worry a little bit that she's going to now get this really great primetime TV slot, and hopefully she keeps singing through her TV show. She keeps putting new music.
Of course.
I wouldn't want her to get sedentary in like sitting on The Voice every year, sitting on the Kelly Clarkson show every year, and just kind of staying in that. I think she's still way too young to just be sitting like and just doing that. Like she should do it, and then when she's not, and listen, I understand she has kids, I understand in her personal life she's gone through this rough divorce, I understand she's got a lot going on, but keep putting the music, when I compare, what was Barbra doing at this time? It was at her age, album, tour, different time, but I think I just wouldn't want to see Kelly kind of get, okay, well I host this show for 30 years like Ellen did, or whatever
counter
it is,
you on
20
that
years.
though is this is an interesting spot for Kelly because what if Kelly has felt like she's kind of tapped out all of her options for writing pop albums and stuff like that, and maybe she'll go into cover land and do something very similar to Barbra. But I think what's kind of interesting about Kelly's life, she's almost 40.
Yeah.
And she's continuing her longevity in this business as a businesswoman as well by doing some of these things like writing children's books or having her talk show or being on The Voice. And she's almost educating the youth in this music industry now. And it's almost something that I kind of wish Barbra was doing.
Yeah,
Why
sure.
isn't Barbra sitting up on The Voice as a coach? Why isn't Barbra have a talk show?
Right.
You know, like what you're saying is like, where is Barbra in the scene though? We see so much about...
Well, Barbra at the time Kelly is at, almost 40 years old, is entering the part where she's maybe not in front of the camera as much, but she's writing, directing, producing. So it's different. Mm-hmm. She wasn't hosting a TV show like the Judy Garland show, the Betty White show, or the Carol Burnett show. She was doing Hollywood from behind the scenes so it's Kelly similar, just a little different.
And maybe a little bit, because I'm like, oh, when you think about it, you're like, oh, wait, why isn't Barbra around here? If people love her so much, she would clearly pull in the ratings.
I also don't really have, I am very respectful of people's time and energy. And at 80 years old, it's hard because when you see Dick Van Dyke and Betty White doing what they're doing well into their 90s, you put someone like Barbra or Liza in their 70s and 80s and you say, where are they? Where are they? Well, you know what? They don't have to be anywhere. And someone like Betty White or Dick Van Dyke kind of not make them look bad, but like, look, I'm acting at 94 still. You don't have to be. But
there could be little things here and there. Where is the Netflix special on Barbra where she's actually there and it's not just, footage from the past? What was the thing during quarantine where it was like Broadway and they were
and Barbra Streisand's going to be here.
And they play a clip from like 1990.
Or no, I think it was a recorded thing for that, but it was just a pre-recorded. It wasn't live. She wasn't there in New York.
The performance from something.
They played an old performance from the early 2000s or something. I'm like, but why? Like, if you're releasing this music,
and they built so much hype of it,
but that's why when she does something like, oh, I'm gonna go to Barclays and I'm gonna do, that's why those tickets, because out of nowhere she's gonna do it and people are gonna flock.
Yes.
The second she says something. So I think Kelly has got a really, really great future ahead of her. When you think about it, she's half the age of Barbra. So she's done a lot. She's very successful.
What would you like to see Kelly do in the future?
I just want to keep...
What's Kelly's next diva moment?
It's just, to me, it's put the music out. Not to talk about another diva, we could talk about it another time, but like when Gaga takes a break from her pop life and sits down with Tony Bennett and puts some music out, that's a cover, but that's cool. Mm-hmm. Like, Kelly, go sit down with someone and write a book with them. Yeah. Or sit down and put an album out. Or do a tour that's like a sit down on the stool, like the Alanis Morissette thing that happened at the Beacon Theater. Like, sit and talk and sing some acoustic.
Yeah, we might get that.
I'd love to hear an acoustic.
Unfortunately, you hate to say it like this, but she did just go through a major divorce.
Right,
so,
maybe she needs that reflection.
Maybe she needs a breather, but also maybe she's going to write a really, angsty album about this. Like, because guess what? That guy...
But she's also going to be extremely, but just between the Kelly Clarkson show and The Voice, she's going to be extremely, and raising two children, she's going to be extremely busy. And I'm not saying that we need to hold certain people up to different standards than others based on their age or whatever. I'm just saying, keep doing it, because when you see artists disappear, it's a little sad. Yeah. Especially when they're so successful. I'm always someone who, like, find the middle ground. You don't have to be constantly 24/7, but don't disappear. Kind of stay in it. And for the sake of the fans, because we're the fans. We want to see once in a while what's going on, so...
And if there's something that I want to see Barbra do in the end of her-ish career, I would love to see, like you're saying, a one night only or a few week stint at Broadway, similar maybe to like Liza at the Palace.
Yeah,
And
or like
Barbra
what Bette Midler did
you
in
know?
Dolly. Like, come on back and just come to
but
New
I don't know
New
if
York
we should
family.
expect her to be in a show like that, but you could have a sit-down engagement on Broadway.
But a Broadway, not a big concert arena. Sit in a 1,000-seat
Sit
Broadway
down
house
on a
and
stool.
talk to us.
Right.
And sell. You'll make a ton of money. People will buy the tickets. Doesn't matter what the price is. People will go. Do 4 or 5 shows a week instead of 8 shows a week. Do it and do it for 3 months, and then but do something. I don't know.
For sure.
Anyway. Oh, it's time. We are out of time now. We had a really good time. This was great.
Wow. That flew by.
Yeah, that really did. We could go another half an hour. But if you all like this Battle of the Divas and you want us to choose 2 people, another theater-y person, another pop person for us to debate, discuss, and give you information on, let us know. Subscribe to our podcast on Spotify or Apple Music. Leave us a review if you love what you heard. Join us on Instagram at Half Hour Podcast. That's where we're doing all the latest posts. This is through Two Worlds Entertainment. You can go to that Instagram as well. But our latest Instagram handle for this is at Half Hour Podcast. Head over there, comment on this latest episode. Let us know what you think. We're going to go back to our weekly recaps on some of the shows and this things that we've been seeing. But every once in a while, we're going to throw in this new mini-series, Battle of the Divas.
Yes.
We're going to take, like I said, a theater-y person, a pop music-y person, and kind of talk about them and have some good times. We love the worlds that we both live in. So
For sure.
But that's all for today. So until next time, signing off for now, I'm Richie.
And I'm Jeff.
Ta-ta.
Bye.